Eleanor Cole carefully adjusted her simple dress, stepping into the lavish surroundings of the embassy gala. The room was a sea of shimmering elegance, with diplomats and dignitaries adorned in tuxedos and glittering gowns. She felt her presence almost audibly clash against the opulence as she guided Lily, the diplomat's young daughter, through the bustling crowd. Eleanor's focus was solely on Lily, who clung to her arm, her discomfort matching Eleanor's own disquiet. Eleanor, quiet and respectful, tried her best to blend in with her surroundings. She offered reassurances to Lily in soft whispers, attempting to soothe the child's blatant unease amid the grandeur and formality of the occasion. At Lily's request for some air, Eleanor took her towards the garden, hoping the flowers and quiet would ease the little girl's nerves. But soon after, Eleanor's heart stopped as panic rippled through the crowd. Whispers escalated into a frenzied alarm: Lily was missing. Murmurs amplified into accusations when the ambassador's wife pointed at Eleanor, her elegant hand incriminating. "She took Lily. I saw her lead her away," she exclaimed with certainty, her voice slicing through the escalating chatter like a knife. Eleanor stood stunned, the eyes of wealthy guests narrowing with suspicion and disdain. Security, swift and emotionless, cornered Eleanor. She felt humiliation scorch her cheeks as she was publicly rebuked, made to wait in mortified silence until an unknown guest safely returned Lily. Still, the blame lingered. Dismissed abruptly and escorted out, Eleanor left the embassy with her head bowed, heart heavy with the injustice she was powerless to alter, knowing truly she had only sought to protect Lily. Returning to her modest apartment, Eleanor Cole felt each step weigh heavy as she trudged wearily through the door. She stood at her small entranceway, shoulders sagging under an unseen burden. The quiet apartment offered no solace, only a space for her thoughts to echo endlessly. She slipped off her shoes and sank into the worn armchair by the window, staring blankly at the indistinct night sky. Sleep eluded Eleanor, each attempt to rest only bringing her back to that pivotal, humiliating moment at the embassy. Her mind replayed the scene relentlessly, the glances of judgment, the pointed accusations, the trust she'd painstakingly built crumbling in seconds. Her reputation was now tarnished, gossip likely spreading through the social circles that once kept her employed and respected. Eleanor could barely muster the energy to speak with those who knew her truth, her friends and family who, despite their encouragements, couldn't truly comprehend the devastation she felt. An unshakable weight of disbelief and shame pressed down upon her, compounded by whispered comments of her future struggles in the employment she desperately needed. In her solitude, Eleanor's memories drifted back, reminding her of who she once was. Once a promising childcare student, she'd earned scholarships through hard work and an innate talent with children. College had seemed the gateway to a future filled with purpose and satisfaction. But that vision faded abruptly when her mother fell ill, and Eleanor chose family over dreams without hesitation. As she cared for her ailing mother, Eleanor left her studies, diving into a series of low-paying jobs to support their household. Despite the financial strain and the emotional toll, she pressed forward with a quiet persistence, determined to rebuild a future from the shadows of abandoned ambitions. Finding joy where she could, she held close a conviction that brighter days would return. Her position with the Diplomat's family had seemed a culmination of her efforts, and a step toward stability. She embraced her role with the diligence and compassion that had always been her hallmark. Eleanor had grown deeply attached to Lily, specifically, pouring warmth into the quiet bond they shared. They spent afternoons unraveling storybooks together, Eleanor patiently teaching Lily to read. Long evenings saw Eleanor comforting Lily when nightmares surfaced, offering whispered reassurances until sleep returned. Now, as Eleanor reflected on those moments with Lily, she felt gut-punched by the sharp divergence between then and now. Where once hope and progress had gilded her path, now shadows loomed. Her reverie was repeatedly broken by recent scenes, twisting her heart into knots as she'd helplessly watched her hard-won stability crack. Days trickled by, each one blending into the next with Eleanor adrift in a fog of uncertainty. In rare moments of respite, she ventured outside. Movement was meant to clear her head, yet it seemed that suspicion followed her everywhere. Even casual glances from strangers felt accusatory, traces of lurking judgment in every stolen look or knowing whisper. Within the confines of her apartment, Eleanor was left with unending speculations of the future. Who would hire her after such a scandal? Would she ever regain any sliver of her one-time promise? Glimmers of strength would surface, only to be quickly drowned by the tide of doubt and the magnitude of her predicament. Eleanor revisited every detail of the gala in search of answers, but none seemed evident. Until one sleepless night, a glimmer of clarity emerged. The sequence of events began to unravel in her mind. Her memory sharpened, and an incident during her time at the gala flashed vividly. Lily's panic-stricken expression as she whispered urgently to Eleanor for help. The reality resettled. Lily wasn't lost by Eleanor's doing. She was fleeing something deeper. The revelation jolted Eleanor upright, a surge of energy cracking her despondency. It was undeniable now. Lily had confided in Eleanor to escape the intimidating presence of the ambassador's hostile cousin, a lurking figure who seemingly hovered at the periphery of public gatherings. In the bustle and confusion, until this moment, details blurred, only now coalescing into focus. In that moment of clarity, Eleanor knew she must act. She scrambled to her feet, fueled by renewed determination, calling the embassy in an attempt to share this breakthrough, to give voice to Lily's true plight. But her attempts were met only with dismissive respites from the flag-waving facade, as they rallied to protect their own, cocooned by status and resources. The abrupt calls echoed in Eleanor's mind, but she was not deterred. Every letdown only strengthened her resolve. If the embassy wouldn't listen, if proof was to be found, she had no alternative but to seek it herself. With undeterred spirit and tenuous hope, Eleanor set about planning her next move, a flicker of possibility kindling amidst the gloom of her position. Amidst uncertainty and past failures, Eleanor felt a latent resilience awakening beneath the darkness. A fierce determination set her heart ablaze, as, on the brink of ruin, she vowed not to settle into defeat. Eleanor ready to pursue the truth, to reclaim the fragments of her integrity, and most importantly, to protect the child she'd come to care for deeply. The path before her bristled with unknowns, but it called with an undeniable sense of purpose, pulling her out of the shadows into the faint glow of redemption. Eleanor sat at her small kitchen table, fingers nervously tapping a rhythmic beat as she tried to calm the whirling thoughts in her mind. Days had passed since her epiphany about the gala, and she was still grappling with the realization that Lily's disappearance had been instigated not by some random event, but by a malevolent presence within the embassy itself. The ambassador's cousin, whose intimidating demeanor sent shivers down Eleanor's spine whenever she recalled his threatening posture around Lily. That night's memory was burned into her consciousness, Lily's whisper pleading for escape, her small hand trembling in Eleanor's grasp. This resolve steeled Eleanor's decision to take action, despite the embassy's dismissive brush-offs during her calls. The frustration of being shut out only emboldened her. She was determined to find a way to confirm her suspicions, to recover any semblance of truth amid the false narrative spun by those intent on maintaining their reputations. Her mind raced, tracing every encounter, compiling each seemingly insignificant moment that could cement her claim. Eleanor decided that the only way to confirm what she knew was to get tangible proof. She needed the surveillance footage from that evening, a daunting task given the embassy's stringent security. But she couldn't let herself waver. Each passing hour where the truth about that night went uncovered weighed heavily on her conscience. When night fell, Eleanor made her way back to the embassy, her heart a chaotic thrum of hope and anxiety. The venue buzzed with its usual evening activity, a spectrum of diplomats and guests unaffected by the drama that had marred Eleanor's existence. Peering cautiously from the shadows of a nearby cafe, Eleanor glimpsed the familiar sight of the guard post she hoped might house her potential ally. Eleanor approached cautiously. Head bowed and pulse racing, she rehearsed the plea she hoped would sway the kind-hearted security guard she'd observed there before, Tom, a younger guard with a friendly smile and an apparent penchant for humor. She had no guarantee of assistance, but it was her one thread of hope. Tom, she greeted nervously at his name badge, trying to inject confidence into trembling sounds. He glanced up, initially cautious, but recognition brightened his expression. "You were the one, at the gala," he said, hesitation in his voice. Eleanor nodded, desperation and determination mingling in her expression. "I need your help, Tom. Please. It's about the night Lily disappeared from the garden." Her voice crackled with urgency, and Eleanor hoped he could sense the sincerity that wove through her words. She explained her predicament, sharing her memories of that night, her conviction in the facts she'd recalled. Despite initial hesitation, something in her story seemed to reach him. Tom exhaled deeply, eyes shifting around cautiously as he weighed unseen risks. "All right, I may regret this, but," he scribbled something on a notepad. "Meet me at the side entrance later." Waiting, Eleanor felt each minute pass like an eternity, her heart caught in a constant flux of hope and trepidation. Tom finally reappeared under the dim glow of streetlights, motioning her to follow. They entered through a staff door, stepping into a maze of narrow, dimly lit corridors that eventually led to a small security monitoring room. Tom rummaged discreetly through the station's digital archives. "We were reviewing a lot of footage that night, remember?" he murmured as Eleanor hovered anxiously nearby. Eleanor's breath caught as scenes from the gala flickered to life on the monitors. The splendor of the event, at once distant and intimate, washed over her senses as she strained to pinpoint the pivotal moments. Then the screen showed Lily, small and fragile, being coaxed to the secluded garden by the ambassador's cousin. Eleanor felt her nails dig into her palm, reminders of her heartbeat echoed through them. "There," she whispered sharply. "That's him. That's the moment." Tom froze the footage, sure enough capturing the cousin blocking Lily's path, his gestures threatening even in silence. Another clip showed Eleanor rushing to swoop the terrified Lily back into the safety of the party. Her hands trembled, emotions surging wildly as undeniable proof spread across the screen. Eleanor felt relief course through her like sunrise banishing shadowed worry. The vindication she witnessed meant more than security in a job. It was a restoration of her integrity, her sense of self that had been shrouded in doubt. "I knew it," Tom whispered, amazement mingling with his words. "They spun a different story, but this changes everything." Eleanor inhaled deeply, steadied by the affirmation. "Tom, is there a way to save this?" she asked, hopeful and urgent. Tom pulled out a simple flash drive, his answer solidified in action. Eleanor committed the scene to this small, powerful device, her heartbeat a steady rhythm of hope. Leaving the embassy that night, Eleanor clutched the evidence close, elated but aware their journey had shifted from finding truth to sharing it. She had stepped forward triumphantly from the margins, prepared to claim not just justice for Lily and herself, but recognition of events she steadfastly stood by. Transported with newfound resilience, Eleanor prepared not only to confront those beyond the harsh exterior of diplomatic decorum but to vindicate her and Lily's shared experience, drawing bold lines between innocence and accountability. This time, Eleanor will not be silenced. This time, she will tell their story authentically, until truth rings clear. The following evening, Eleanor found herself standing at the gates of the embassy once more. This familiar place, where she had once moved about unnoticed, now seemed a fortress of daunting aloofness. She clutched the small flash drive in her pocket, a beacon of truth ready to be unleashed, and inhaled deeply to steady her nerves. She intended to attend a follow-up event scheduled for the evening, knowing it was the perfect opportunity to set things right. The gala was being held in honor of a visiting dignitary, ensuring a full attendance of those who had witnessed the original chaos. As Eleanor entered, she focused her thoughts on Lily, whose innocence had been weaponized in a game she neither understood nor consented to. The sorrow of how quickly judgments had been passed on a child's whispered movements ignited Eleanor's resolve. Those who once doubted her now had no choice but to reckon with the indisputable evidence in her possession. Eleanor wound her way through ornately decorated halls, the noise from animated conversations barely registering over her resolute focus. She searched for those key figures, those who stood at the heart of what unfolded that fateful night. Upon reaching the grand ballroom, Eleanor found it easily populated by the familiar faces of diplomats and guests, eagerly seated for the evening's events. The ambassador and his wife, precisely attired and supremely confident, stood addressing the gathered crowd. Eleanor took this moment to discreetly approach the media desk occupying a modest corner. The reassured glances from members of her usual media contacts offered a shred of comfort, convincing her of the support brewing quietly yet firmly. Once she was ready, Eleanor motioned for a journalist she'd befriended during her tenure, Anna, a perceptive and open-minded writer who'd often worked closely with embassy events. Their eyes met, recognition lighting Anna's gaze, and Eleanor nodded subtly. Allying herself where voices would matter, Eleanor's resolve only fortified. Anna began capturing the event by broadcasting live snippets and, through a supportive scoff of encouragement, motioned Eleanor forward. Her march was deliberate as Eleanor approached the platform prepared for evening speeches. Her voice, despite nerves buzzing beneath the surface, resonated clearly and drew immediate attention. "Good evening, esteemed guests," Eleanor started, the measured hues of her voice stunning the room into silence. "I stand before you not for celebration, but to deliver a truth many were not exposed to, a truth I trust will clarify misunderstandings from the previous event." A pause, steadying herself. "As the nanny wrongfully accused during the previous gala, I seek not only my vindication but justice for Lily, whom I could not protect then as fully as I should have." Curiosity piqued, the attendees exchanged whispers, assembly shifting with unsettled energy. Eleanor could feel the tension, palpable and seething, but she forged on, undeterred. "In my hand rests evidence of what truly transpired that night," Eleanor continued, holding up the flash drive, its significance far surpassing its size. Anna adjusted her equipment, ensuring the broadcast caught Eleanor's every word. With permission, Eleanor gestured to the projector, staff now intrigued with their collective murmurs, obliging her request. As she connected the device, light flickered to life on the screen behind her, the room darkening to enhance the visuals. The footage began to roll, revealing to gasps and stunned silence the moment when the ambassador's cousin coaxed Lily into the garden, her tiny form hesitating under undue pressure. Gasps began to ripple through the assembly as the video continued, showing Eleanor's protective actions, the cousin's position caught starkly against the ambient settings. Eleanor spotted the ambassador's wife, her initial poise crumbling to dismay, venomous certainty undone. Eyes darted around, her words tangled in defensive denial, silenced as the footage of her cousin's intimidating actions amplified across the screen. A collective murmur swelled, translating into disbelief and dawning realization. Eleanor felt the shift in dynamics, allies sustaining her momentum as judgment twisted onto the true servants of deceitful acts. The cousin, conspicuously attempting to shelter within the crowd's periphery, froze under investigative stares, shuffling back awkwardly as demands for clarity intensified. Lily's voice, so softly spoken that evening, resonated once more in Eleanor's memory. "She's the one who helped me escape." Words selectively withheld until now, words strengthened through Eleanor's approach in solidarity with a child guided past ill-conceived games. As Eleanor turned to face her audience, she saw the crackling veneer of propriety floundering, replaced by rising tensions, suspicions awakening, truths taking shape. The ambassador's family now appeared flustered, strained under televised records thrown upon them, dispersing among fragments of their upheld persona. Having delivered pivotal evidence with her conviction clear as glass, Eleanor stepped back, letting attendees fill the space of interviewers, demanding explanations from the now visibly unsettled embassy delegates. Witnesses sought confirmations from one another, sharing astonishment and righteous anger as perspectives realigned. Eleanor had fulfilled her promise to Lily. The narrative they shared had shifted towards a future illuminated by open discourse rather than unfounded belligerence. With Anna guiding media streams, Eleanor watched as her action enacted a tide of unyielding accountability, unburdening shadows of discourse to commence. Eleanor stepped back into the crowd, her heart unburdened by innocence proven and purpose hewn from tangled experiences. Her calm resilience radiated assurance rising through the assembly, a beacon in her validation through honesty past embargoed tales. As the last of the guests began to trickle out, whispers hanging like festive garlands beneath the grand chandeliers, Eleanor felt a sense of resolution settle within her. The evening's revelations had unfurled a tapestry of truth that even those most deeply nestled in the warm cocoon of embassy life could no longer ignore. The ambassador's cousin, catapulted from a life of unchecked privilege to looming disgrace, faced the realization of losing his esteemed position, along with an indictment of character that would follow him, casting long shadows over his career prospects and social standing. The ambassador himself, having tried to sidestep direct confrontation, now found himself navigating an intricate dance of accountability, thrust into conversations of reform and transparency. As he returned to Eleanor, the sincerity of his demeanor spoke volumes more than hollow words possibly could. "Your courage has highlighted areas in dire need of our attention," he admitted, a flicker of respect in his eyes. Eleanor nodded, accepting his words as a gesture of acknowledgement rather than an outright balm for past grievances. She felt the weight of past accusations not only lift from her shoulders, overshadowed by the bright beacon of restored integrity, but also begin to fade from daily perception as they lost their power to mark her existence. An unexpected offer came swiftly afterward, a reinstatement accompanied by a formal promotion and the possibility of further educational support, should Eleanor wish to pursue her former child care studies. It was an unexpected and generous proposal, one that warranted consideration. As the evening wound down, Eleanor took a moment to stand aside, observing the softened whispers of appreciation now directed her way. Overwhelmed by the sudden rush of validation, she allowed herself to savor the vindication, the sweet, elusive taste of hard-earned respect, from individuals who once viewed her through a lens clouded by bias and whispers. The ambassador's wife also approached Eleanor, her earlier defensive posture replaced by a more conciliatory air. "Eleanor, it was wrong to have accused you without a fair hearing," she confessed, her voice balanced between grace and an unease not easily shaken. Eleanor met her admission with quiet composure, appreciating the effort even as she recognized the wider systematic flaws it could only begin to address. It became clear throughout the evening that Eleanor had become an unwitting catalyst, her actions prompting a deeper dialogue about accountability and integrity among those accustomed to traversing life without such confines. This mess had, inadvertently, shone a light on the need for change within the upper echelons of social and professional realms. Despite offers of celebration, often a polite insistence among the attending diplomats and allies familiar with Eleanor's path, she chose instead to decline cozy festivities, preferring quiet reflection over giddy overtures. With humility wrapped around her achievement, Eleanor's thoughts turned to the wider implications, that every small act of courage ripples outward, inviting others to question, to stumble, and ultimately to recalibrate. As Eleanor slipped from the soiree into the fresh night air, she felt the world seemed suddenly larger, less constrained by bygone discomforts and freed to explore the paths reborn from lessons learned wearily along her journey. Her peregrinations were linked now not solely to the past confusion but clearer paths opening ahead. Eleanor walked slowly, her feet tracing a steady rhythm of quiet triumph over elegance and grandeur, a rhythm derived from self-respect and humility thriving beyond their initial intent. She no longer felt invisibly bound by demeaning glances or whispers' sting. Those judgments took on ethereal qualities when solid grounding supported the guiding principle that genuinely care and perseverance overhaul burdens hoisted unjustly. By morning's light, Eleanor returned to her apartment, where the cityscape glistened in tranquil dawn's wake. She stood there, eyes sweeping the familiar views, a million thoughts tumbling into a backdrop of promising horizons yet uncharted, waiting for steps, her steps, boldly proceeding without retrospection anchoring them in hesitation. Her phone buzzed gently with messages from friends and family, notes of elation and pride stitched within each line. She responded slowly, letting the moments catch up, acknowledging every kind word with gratitude born from her resurrection into the daylight. Eleanor knew time remained to consider offers, whether to reclaim the life structured for years, grasp alternative paths whispered among recent suggestions, or return familial embraces. Eleanor dressed casually, capturing herself in simple reflection to start the day, ready to embrace challenges ahead. The anticipated unpredictability filled her veins, each vital heartbeat a reminder of her truth-telling and the pathfinder she had become, not merely remaining in resilience's shadow but actively weaving it into intention. As Eleanor stepped into the new day, fresh air bracing her for renewed adventure, she felt an exhilarating lightness carrying her forward. A deep breath carried the infinite potentialities once written in unseen ink, now yours newly inscribed in fluid promises upon your world. The quiet woman they had judged too simply no longer lingered without note, the past displayed gracefully upon wisdom's sphere, displaced by Eleanor's deeply rooted dignity walking anew, one who knew tightly of weight's weariness but chose instead to roam with liberated eyes. Now, finally infused with unshackled resilience, Eleanor faced each unfamiliar horizon, cushioned within each step's utter resilience. And in doing so, she left not just a trail of truth, but also hope, the indefinable threads tying heart and triumph together upon paths ready to be trod, an endorsement of yesterday reincarnated into tomorrow's radiant embrace, discovering the quiet, simple woman they dismissed had truly always been worthy of trust.